gonna rock! Hola, and welcome to Rockapedia, here on BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. I am Music Man Mike, and as usual, joining me running the show is the producer, Dylan. Good morning, sir. How are you? He's good. He just.
I'm good. Sorry, we're having problems over here with our whole setup that I was going to reset before this afternoon show, but we'll pretend like there's no problems at all. I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Good. He just lip synced to me that he was good, so I knew it before he started his speech there. We tried to get Joe on, Gypsy Joe, straight out of Richmond, Virginia. Unfortunately, there's some kind of a technical difficulty, but as I said before we came on air, that is our specialty. We deal with technical difficulties to the T. That's how we survive. That's what makes this show is technical difficulties. So whether it's somebody not being able to make the show and we skip a week, which we hate doing that, but it happens sometimes, or Gypsy Joe not being able to log on this morning, we are joined today by our special guest, second time on the show today. Welcome, please, my Uncle David Vance from Fall River, Kansas. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning, Mike.
How you doing?
Oh, real good. Taking it easy.
Yeah, so we talked about, before we got on air with all of you people, we talked about the weather. So here we are in Texas. It's nice out. The sun's out. It's cool. It's wintertime, January, but it's not winter like it is up in Kansas. So you talk about Kansas, you're talking about a few days ago, I talked to one of my cousins. They said, ooh, Burr, it's 22 here. Well, 22, we don't see that very often here. And where Uncle David's at, it's nice and cool and decent day today, he said, but it's getting ready to turn to the cold and possibly some snow. Is that right?
Well, we're doing 59 degrees for a high today. The next 3 days probably going to be in the 20s.
Yeah, it's probably the same thing here. 59, 65 here today, but we're not going to drop in the 20s like you.
Yeah, then at nighttime it gets down, like 10, 15 degrees.
So one of the things we talked about months ago, me and Joe talked about it. I've talked to my Uncle Dave about it on the phone, text messaging back and forth about the Beatles documentary. What's it on? Is that Netflix? It's Disney Plus.
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus, yep. So it's 4 episodes, and let me tell you, for a retired guy like my Uncle David, he's got the luxury of watching all 4 episodes and absorbing it all. I'm a busy guy, still working. As he brought up to me a little bit ago, I need to start thinking about my retirement because the retirement age is coming upon me. And so we quickly changed the subject to something else because I understand. I am a realist, but I'm also not trying to face some of the facts. But yeah, one of these days I'll retire as well. But in the meantime, I got to take in these episodes of the Beatles documentary one episode at a time, and not even one episode, like half an episode or 3/4, and then I shut it off, reacquaint myself with it, and I start episode 2, episode 3. I haven't watched the whole thing yet, but I told Joe the other day, I said, let's get on and talk with Uncle David about it, his perspective of it, obviously, because he was a teenager growing up in those days when it was happening. So I guess let's just start with this, Uncle David. When they came to America, and I can relate to this only because it's my birth date. I was born in 1964. I believe that's when they first came to America. Is that right?
Well, it was the early 60s. I can't remember the exact year, but yeah, they started their band in like 60, and then by 62, I think it's when Ringo joined. So they probably came to the United States about that time.
Yeah, so and kind of the same. They follow the same path as the Rolling Stones, and it even shows you that in the documentary. Like everybody was saying in the documentary, you get bits and pieces of it. Well, if the Stones are doing it, we want to do this. So it's always kind of the same pattern, right?
Yeah, it was really an interesting series. I watched all 3. Or the whole thing in like 3 days, I guess it was. I kind of binge watched. I'm able to do that now since I don't have a
job. I wish I could do that, and I will eventually watch all of them. But yeah, from the beginning, from the beginning, just what I saw. So I didn't know what it was going to be about. I had no idea what it was. There was a lot of talk about it. I got on there and started watching it, and so here you are at the breaking up point is what it was to me. It was the breaking up point. It was the end, and you see Paul holding it together. So Paul's the guy pushing everybody to let's finish this out. Let's do this album. Let's go out with one album. And I don't know I don't know what everybody was thinking. I still couldn't tell at the beginning what were they thinking, but I knew one thing. I knew they'd had enough of it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, they were trying to Paul was trying to hold it together, and George was kind of the outsider, and you could tell John and Paul even had a little rift between them of some sort. And Ringo was more or less just an innocent bystander sitting back on his drums and falling asleep every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing between Paul and John wasn't so much. I don't know. It was kind of like it was like brothers, you know. So you have that thing between you maybe where something's not right, and you have that little tiff or whatever. But it's real easy to overcome. And I told Joe this on the phone one night we were talking about it. I said, "Did you notice this? Here's what I noticed: that even though Paul was very pushy, he knew how not to come across that way and not to make those guys mad so much. I guess it's something he learned. So probably if you saw the same video of those guys sitting in a room 5 years before that, they may have almost come to fisticuffs. But Paul had learned how to address things. And so when he talked to John about, hey, how about if you do it this way? And he showed him something on the guitar, and John would play it or sing it differently, sing it this way. He would come across as, okay, and he would try it. He would experiment with it. He said, yeah, I like that. So for Paul to be able to do that and John say he liked it and there was no argument there, that's pretty awesome because that's hard to do.
Yeah, Paul did a good job of, I think, getting the best out of everybody. He would lead them in the direction he wanted them to go to get them to where they needed to be to finish the song or whatever they needed to do.
Yeah, because I've been in those situations before, so it's a little bit different for me because I've been in a room with four guys, you know, me and three other guys. I've been in that room where you're sitting down and putting a song together, and and everybody's got their ideas of what it should be, and it's complicated. But I'll tell you what, I've never been in a room like that where everything's that was very professional.
That was what was so cool about the whole documentary of those, because it's like you were in the room with them the whole time, because there's really no narrator or anything. You're just sitting there with them going through everything they did. And when you get to the final one, that's really the best one, because that's when it pulls all together and they have the rooftop concert, which was really good. It was a great series.
Yeah, which was and the rooftop thing too was part of the conversation throughout. Probably not first episode, but from the second part 2 on, they talked about what are we going to do, and you got these guys, the guys in the background, you know, the guys that were the yes men, I call them, you know, that laughed at all the jokes even though they weren't funny. That just did everything. Bring you coffee, bring you tea, bring you wine, bring it, you know, just those guys. And they said, well, why don't we do the island? We're going to do an island. We're going to bring all the fans on a boat and a cruise and go out there. And those guys are like, no, why would you do that? And how much money is it going to cost? So well, don't worry about the money. We got the money. So I know we got the money, but why should we spend it on something like that? You know, so they were more economical. They were more grounded, I guess you would say. And these guys were dreaming up schemes of how to go out big time, like or fireworks. Yeah, and that's not what the Beatles wanted.
Yeah, it was hard to tell what they couldn't decide what they wanted throughout. It was like using one of their songs. It's like the long and winding road to get to the rooftop concert.
Yeah, and the rooftop ended up being probably the best option and the best decision that they made throughout the whole thing. And Joe argued with me about this. Of course, like I said, I haven't seen all 4 episodes, but at one time, I believe somebody said, well, why don't we just do it on the rooftop? And I think Paul was against that. And then at the end, he came around to it. Is that right?
I think so. I believe that's the way it was, yeah. It may have been that was the only option they had left when they got to that point. point because they completely ran out of time to do something.
Yeah, so
well, we might as well do it on the rooftop.
another thing that Joe brought to my attention that I
There he
noted.
is.
There he is, Gypsy Joe,
Hey,
straight out
hey.
of Richmond, Virginia.
Boy, that took some work.
Huh? It did.
I was
Good morning,
sweating.
Joe.
Good morning and a happy belated
I got my
birthday.
dog woke up here too.
So we're not quite to the middle of our Beatles conversation. We're just kind of at the beginning. And what I was going to bring up before you came on was the fact that I'm sorry.
I've been watching for the last couple of minutes, actually.
Okay. Yeah. So what I was going to bring up was the fact that you pointed out to me something, and that was that John never took anything too seriously. In the studio, he was playing around, joking around, strumming his guitar, going back to a song they hadn't played for 15 years, 5 years. You know, I mean, geez, the Beatles weren't around that long when you think about their career. But yeah, he wasn't serious in the studio. Joe brought that out to me, and I started watching. I said, you know what? You're right. He's just there having a good time, and he's not stressed out. He's having a good time. Nothing's serious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's even serious
Sounds like
moments
the
where
song
he's
I
like
Think
goofing
About.
off, and like I would be frustrated if I was in that room with him because sometimes he's a little too much. But you know, it keeps things light, I guess, because you know that was the end of their career, and it's like I always thought, from what I heard, that they weren't getting along, and things were like it was very loose.
Well, and I don't, and I kind of understand the part where they knew it was the end of their career, but then again, if you're those four guys in a room, are you looking at it that way?
No,
I
definitely
know you're
not.
pushing to get that record out and then be done with it, but just think about what am I going to do if I'm George Harrison? What am I doing next? If I'm Ringo Starr, what am I doing after this?
The other thing you have to keep in mind is, although that was the last record they released, they went on and recorded another album after that. And it was just released before that. It was Abbey Road, I think it was. Was recorded after Let It Be, but was released before Let It Be. So they went on and did other stuff after that, but it just seems awkward because Let It Be is actually the last album released, but they released another album, or they recorded another album before that or after that.
Yeah.
See how confusing it is?
I talked to Dylan about it too, and it was kind of like some of those songs on both those albums, you could see their departure from each other. So there were definitely George Harrison songs on there, and there was definitely Paul McCartney songs on there. You know what I mean? It was kind of like my example was Kiss Dynasty album. Dynasty was leftovers from the solo albums. So there's Paul Stanley songs, there's Gene Simmons songs, there's Ace Frehley songs, and they called it a Kiss album. So the Beatles kind of did the same thing. They were just like, okay, I got this song. It wasn't really a band song, but you know. And then they all, after that, all led successful careers as solo artists.
Well,
Really?
George Harrison even says, and I was never really a big George Harrison fan until I watched this. And I just never really appreciated the songs that he did. Like, I was never really a fan. But he talks in there about, well, first he leaves the band because he's frustrated with the whole thing. And at one point he even says, well, I have enough of my own songs that I can record. I was going to give them to people, but I can record it myself. I'm going to do a solo album.
Yeah.
And so you can see that George like was losing interest in like being told what to do by John and Paul and wanted to do his own thing because he had all these songs built up.
Well, he was like the baby brother in the band, so to speak, you know.
And that's a rough position to be
missing
in.
out on something here. I'm not picking up any of Joe's audio. I can see Joe, but I can't hear a word he's saying.
Oh, you can't hear Joe?
No.
Well, Dylan, the producer, stepped out of the studio for a minute, but when he gets back in here, we'll address that. But so far, Joe said, blah, 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 blah.
All right, I got it.
The teacher on Charlie Brown.
Yeah. Wah, 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 wah. Yeah, so when Dylan gets back here, we'll fix that. I don't know what it is, but yeah, we've had those technical difficulties. I was telling Uncle David, we live off technical difficulties. Rockapedia is technical difficulties. So we get through all that stuff, so to speak. But yeah, so
Ringo's.
go ahead.
Were there any Ringo songs on that last album?
What was Octopus Garden?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Octopus Garden was a Ringo song.
I think they wrote it for Ringo to sing because it seems like there was a point where Paul was putting it together and Ringo Starr was singing along with him, and he said, "Yeah, I'm writing a song for Ringo."
Has anybody seen my drumsticks? Hey, Dylan, Uncle David can't hear Joe's vocals. Yeah, and then
One, two,
and then
two.
and then I used to have the 45 of Ringo's single. What? It Don't Come Easy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I had that. That was probably really his claim to fame. After, I mean, what else was there after that?
Caveman.
Huh?
There we go. Yeah,
Caveman with Barbara Bach. I think I would go to Uncle David's and he would have Caveman on all the time.
Well, who was Ringo's wife was in that movie too, right?
Barbara Bach.
Huh? Barbara Bach. Yeah.
Barbara Bach.
I don't know why the first thing that comes to my head is Brigitte Bardot, but similar along the same lines.
That's the first name that always comes into my head.
Brigitte Bardot. Yeah, so It Don't Come Easy. I had the 45 of that. So yeah, and then let's just. I mean, I haven't seen episode 4 yet. I haven't seen how it finalizes. I mean, in history, I know how it finalizes, but and I've talked to Joe about this before too. We already know all that stuff, but to see it and like Uncle David said, feels like you're in the room and be a part of it. That's a totally different experience. I mean, just to watch it happen, it's pretty awesome to see them do what they do, to make the decisions they make, to work on stuff and just goof around. I mean, to be in the room and just watch that's a special part of it. And you don't get that from there's not a lot of documentaries out there like that, especially from back then.
Yeah, it was frustrating at first to watch it because I thought.
Say it again, Uncle David.
Yeah, it's just the way they wrote all those songs while they're in there. Somebody start one and they'd all work together, and then in 2 weeks or a matter of a month, whatever, they wrote 14 songs, I guess, 12 songs.
Yeah, to watch them come together, like to watch the songs work, like it was amazing.
Yeah.
And then when I say we in the music business, we went from that to in the 70s and even into the 80s, spending 6 months to a year on an island in Zanzibar somewhere, writing 12 songs, and spending all this money. And that's why you have the empty Capitol building in Hollywood to this day. That's why you have all those guys. I mean, there were 20 guys, like I told Uncle David earlier. The yes men in that video or the documentary drive me crazy. The guys that laugh at the jokes, the guys that, everything you say is on point. Paul, you're the best.
Like their producer the entire time. He sits back there and he's like, "Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect." Until George Martin is finally like, "All right, guys, time to speed it up. Let's get something rolling out here."
Yeah. Yeah, I do have to say I got a whole new respect for George Martin. He definitely was running the show in the background.
Yeah. Yeah, watching him work was like he would just appear every once in a while and just like straighten things out and then walk away.
Yeah.
Like he was never like, really vocal about a lot. He just took care of business and walked away.
It's kind of like Rick Larkin at BCB. He shows up.
I kind of doubt that.
He shows up every once in a while just to put a stamp of approval or disapproval on something, and then he disappears.
I have a feeling there's more to it than that.
Well, Dylan works closely with him, more closely with him than I do. So
a bit louder than George Martin.
A bit more vocal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gets his point across. So after that's all over, and like I said, I still haven't seen episode 4, but I look forward to seeing the whole thing, closing it out. And you know what? Realistically, I'll probably go and watch the whole thing from beginning to end again just to get it all together. And Uncle David, I told Joe this. I said, you know, after you watch the whole thing, you have to watch the whole thing first. But then somebody should go back and do a condensed version of like all 4 episodes in like 2 hours. So you got the gist of it. So now let's just watch the basic part. But you have to watch the whole four seasons or 4 episodes to understand what it was that was going on and what they're trying to sell you, right?
Yeah, it was frustrating to watch the way. At first, it was frustrating to watch because I thought it was going to be more condensed. I thought it was going to be more I didn't realize how long it was. But then you appreciate watching them write the songs and like the little quirks in between and like, you know, you start, especially if you're a music fan or if you're into like a musician, especially like you love watching that stuff happen. You like watching that. It's like an organic process of like songwriting. And it's pretty amazing because they come in there with bare bones and like finish with these great songs.
That's why I told.
It could be
Go
more
ahead.
for somebody that's interested in music or interested in the Beatles at all. But it was it was quite an experience. Just it's like being there in the room and a lot of conversation going on, eating, drinking, smoking, you name it. It's just their everyday lives they were going through, and at the same time, writing all this music.
Hey, so speaking of smoking, let's talk about Billy Preston real quick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So was he?
He needs another cigarette.
Yeah, was he or was he not a key element to this whole thing? Because I really feel like he was.
Yeah. It came back.
He was the
again.
savior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
The first episode when George Harrison brings up Billy Preston, and then this third episode, Billy Preston steps in, and you kind of get the feeling that someone like made a call and said, "Oh, you're going to be in England? Well, hey, there's no way he just showed up out of the blue. Like, yeah, there was a connection made. They don't talk about like he was invited by one of those guys, probably George Harrison."
And I thought it was really interesting at the end how they kind of snubbed him on the roof a little bit. They put Billy in the corner and just didn't really get a whole lot of footage of him, even though he contributed so much to these songs and really rewrote a lot of the lead parts and kind of took over Paul's portion of the piano once the songs got written.
Yeah, I don't remember Billy on the rooftop at all, actually. I know he was there, but like you said,
you could barely see him.
Yeah. Joe, looks like the sun's coming in here.
Yeah. the winter sun.
The winter solstice. Is it the solstice they call it? Yeah. So another thing about the Billy Preston, I told Joe this, and I don't know, Uncle David, since you've seen them all, and I don't know how much you recollect of everything, the details and stuff, but I was watching it one night, and after they brought Billy in, and he sat in and jammed with them a couple songs, they were in the listening room together, back in the studio, whatever, just listening back to what they had just recorded or played, and Paul's in the corner, and the band's lined up next to him and around over here, and Billy's down here. And they start talking about moving forward and what we're going to do and this and that. And I think that Billy, in a way, was trying to sell himself to them, but they also were encouraging him. Can you be a part of this? Because I think there's a place for you here. And in the corner, I saw Paul sitting there and biting his nails and just being quiet, which is not Paul's forte. But I think he had been so pushy on everything else going forward, or from that point beyond before, that he wanted these guys to see it themselves. He didn't want to sell Billy Preston to them. He wanted them to see what he saw and just do it themselves. And they did, but for him to sit there in the corner and just do like this, and look around the room, I thought that's a tell. That's one of those poker things you look at. Do you remember that at all, Uncle David?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Speaking of biting his nails, he did that a lot. I never seen anybody bite their nails so much in my life. Yeah, I think if they kept going, I kind of have a feeling Billy Preston might have been a part of it if they had kept the band going. Because he did bring them back together. He gave them new life when he came into the scene. He gave them new life, and they kind of all got back together at that point.
Hmm. Yeah, because in my opinion, and forgive me, keyboard players out there, piano players, forgive me, but I mean, guys like Elton John, guys like Billy Preston, I mean, Billy Joel, name your piano players, whoever you want, Rick Wakeman from Yes, I mean, keyboard players, synthesizer players, I mean, phenomenal, definitely big part of each band that they were in, a part of, but, when you talk about the Beatles and let's put a piano track in it, it's almost like they had the attitude before Billy came along, like, well, who wants to play the piano part? I'll do it. It's a piano part. What's the big deal? But really, now that you see that, it's like, okay, it's not just a piano part. That's Billy Preston, and he kicked that thing up about 10 notches when he got on there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also another part. There's a part of that where they weren't, their plan was to record it live. So when they could put a piano in before, they could put the piano in and then play the instruments, or play the instruments and then play the piano. They didn't need a fifth guy. For the live thing, they needed a fifth guy. If they're going to record it live, they needed to have a piano player.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. What amazed me also is everybody could play all the different instruments too. If you watch the different episodes, you might get there and Paul or John or somebody might be sitting in on the drums or on a different instrument than what they normally played. It's like they would just rotate around every once in a while.
Even Yoko could get up and scream.
Oh God!
I was gonna say, what'd you say, Uncle David? I didn't hear you.
So you need some earplugs when she was on there.
Yeah. I think one of my not one of my favorite parts, but a very cool part. It just tells you, like everybody says, oh, Yoko broke up the band. Oh, all this stuff they say that, and you can see it in the video or in the documentary. She didn't break up the band. I mean, she's just hanging out, and she was fine. They accepted her just like they accepted anybody else in the room. She was no different. But yeah, when Paul got on the drums and Yoko was singing and John was playing guitar and he was doing this feedback like Jimi Hendrix stuff, and Paul's playing the drums and she's singing, I'm like, what in the world is this? What's going on?
So the guy that directed,
yeah,
the guy that directed this, Lindsay Michael Hogg, or he's the one that originally started it. He also did the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus, and in that there is a scene where it's Keith Richards, Eric Clapton, Keith Moon on drums, and Yoko Ono is singing. And there's points where there's a guy playing a fiddle, and there's points where he looks at her like, "What is happening right now?" It's really funny. He's just like, "What is happening?" Yeah, it's and Keith Richards, of course, he doesn't care. He's out of it. He's just playing his guitar, but like it's pretty funny.
Well, then Billy Preston went on to tour with, I want to say, didn't he tour with the Stones after that?
He did for years.
Tour with the Stones, and he was also part of the, I want to say he was part of the Leon Russell thing. Leon Russell did something with George Harrison to raise money for overseas.
Oh, the
Bangladesh, yes. Yeah, he was, I mean, everybody was a part of that. That was a big deal. I can't believe that hasn't gotten more exposure than what it's gotten. I mean, us guys know about it, and there's a handful of people out there that know about it, but really, that's a big deal. That was a big show.
And you know what else he did was Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band movie, he sang "Get Back."
Really?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was the wind vane on the top of the building with the bugle or whatever. He played that part, and he sang "Get Back" at the end.
Now I'm gonna have to go back and watch that again, even though you've gave it a 1 star on your 1 through 5, Joe.
Yeah, it's definitely 1 through 5. 1 out of 5.
All right, guys. Well, anything else we want to touch on before we hit the road? Because it's been about 30 minutes of Rockapedia.
Yeah. Sorry about coming in late, man.
No, you're good with that. We said happy birthday to Uncle David, and I think. Go ahead.
Said it was worth the wait.
It's worth the wait. Yeah. I think last time we had Uncle David on the show, it was like a week or so after his birthday, so kind of a yearly tradition. Yeah, we tried to get last week, and last week didn't happen, but that would have been on his birthday, I think. Was it Tuesday last week?
Yeah, my phone was still in Colorado.
That's right. You had the phone issue, and Joe had the COVID issue. So Joe's getting over COVID now, and you've got your phone back, so all that's good. Hey, the other thing I was going to talk about real quick, just touch on, so the Bangladesh show, like I said, was a big show, but also we lost 2 weeks ago, I believe, we lost Mr. Michael Lang, who was the guy that put together the Woodstock show. So forever a hippie. Mr. Lang was 77 when he passed away, and you see his pictures recently, as 5-10 years ago, whatever. He still had the big long hair, still looked the same as he ever did when he was 21, 22, whenever Woodstock was going on. But we lost Michael Lang, and I always wondered, Uncle David, I mean, to me, that was kind of like and I know you were kind of a hippie, but you weren't really like hippie like those guys, right? Like the Woodstock guys. I mean, that's Santana, that's Jimi Hendrix, it's Janis Joplin.
Right.
To me, that screams Aunt Brenda, not you so much, right?
Actually, Brenda was the one that liked Janis Joplin, and I started listening to Janis Joplin because of Brenda. But I really do like Janis Joplin. It's more the blues.
Yeah.
I really like her. Oh, other thing you forgot to mention was Ronnie Spector.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we did lose Ronnie Spector in the last week, and I didn't. I was out of town in Phoenix for the last 4 days. Just got back Sunday afternoon, but yeah, I did see that. I didn't get to address it on Rockapedia or on my Facebook or just talk about it in general. But yeah, she was definitely. I did read some stuff about it, some interviews that she had, shows she's been on, whether it's Tonight Show with David Letterman, just past performances. Of course, her big thing, her comeback thing was the Eddie Money song where she sang the Be My Little Baby in the background track, which is what she was famous for. So Eddie brought her back for that. But yeah, Ronnie Spector, and she said in one of those interviews that rock and roll is what she that's who she is. I mean, that's how she considers herself. So she finds herself as a rock and roll person. I mean, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, being the Ronettes, lead singer of a girl group or whatever, but she was a rock and roller. So yeah, Ronnie Spector.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't the Ronettes open for the Beatles a few times?
I think the Beatles opened for the Ronettes.
Really? Oh my God.
Or maybe I might be thinking of the Stones.
Yeah, she was. I mean, she definitely was. I mean, the voice, a female voice of rock and roll. God bless her soul. You know, she led a troubled life thanks to the craziness of Phil Spector. You know, he did some good things when it came to the Wall of Sound, and we've talked about him on the show before. The bands he produced, the things he did with the Beach Boys or whoever he worked with. I mean, he did some great stuff, but you know, he's just a crazy guy, and he ruined her life for the most part. Luckily, she found her way out of it, just like Tina Turner found her way out of Ike's relationship and all that stuff. But yeah, rest in peace, Ronnie Spector, for sure. Good bringing that up, Uncle David. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you for joining Rockapedia. I'm Music Man Mike. That is Gypsy Joe joining us late for class. And my Uncle David again for his second episode of Rockapedia. Dylan, the producer. We are out of here. Later, guys. Thank you.
I want to rock!